What's up YouTube? Today I'm going to show you how to do a 5 on top, skin on the sides fade without using any hard guidelines. You always want to make sure you comb through their hair, look for cowlicks, go against the grain, crisscross with the grain, side to side, make sure you get all the hairs cut. Next we're going to follow with the 1.5 Oster blade. Now you want to maintain this movement going straight up. The head's obviously round, so as long as you go straight up with it, the head's going to do most of the fading for you. This is a very important technique, that way you don't need to put any hard lines in there. Now you can notice that the grain of the hair is going forwards, so I'm going to jump to the front right now, and I'm going to start that guide just how I did on the other side, and I'm going to meet my previous guide in the back of the head there. As you can see, I'm kind of working a little bit diagonal because you need to go against the grain of the hair. His hair is getting pushed forward quite a bit, so you kind of need to go a little bit diagonally on his hair. Now I'm using the Wall Senior, and I'm using my flat top comb to pull the hair back. That way you can actually cut it. Anything that hangs over the edge of the comb, you cut it right here. As you can see, when I release the hair, it lays back forward and it just naturally fades itself out. Anything that hangs over the edge of the comb, you cut it right here. This is what's called over directing. You pull the hair back, you cut it, when you release it, it fades itself out. See that bulk right there? That's what you want to cut off. Next, I'm going to use the number 1 detachable blade. I'm going to go straight up with the movement. And this is going to be very important in the sense that I'm not putting a hard line in this. I'm going to use a plastic number 1 after this to fade the metal 1 to the metal 1.5. This is going to set the tone for how high or low the fade's going to be. So as you can see, that light shadow is going to be very easy to get out with the plastic number 1. Now I'm using the number 1 plastic to fade from the 1 to the 1.5. See how my movement stays going straight up? The lever's closed all the way right here, and the higher you go with the machine, the more you open up your lever. A lot of the times you can't even really see how much it's cutting. You have to listen for it. You got to keep in mind we're working with thousandths of an inch difference that'll show a shadow or not. So you really got to pay attention to the sounds your machine makes, and you'll get comfortable and familiar with it and know exactly what it's doing. Okay, after that's done all the way around the head, we're going to start with the triple lot. I was looking in the wrong camera and didn't realize what was going on, so excuse the angle, but you're going to see it right here. I started this right about the the corner of the hairline, like around the hook. Um, Notice once again, my movement is relatively straight up, and very light shadow of a line that's going to be left behind that. We're going to follow that with the closed zero with the wall. Notice how I overlap a little bit into the metal number 1. You always want to make sure and overlap from one side to the next because it's going to give you a smooth transition. You can see at the top of the movement I'm ever so slightly rocking the machine away. Now that's to avoid putting the hard guideline, because if you do this step carefully, you'll avoid putting the hard line in there. Now right here I'm wiping a little bit of that loose hair off. This is important, that way you can see what's actually there and what's just loose hair that's just left behind. Okay, now I'm using the no guard on the wall senior, and I like to baby step into it and see exactly how much it's cutting before I close the lever, and once you reach the desired length, then you move forward. Now keep in mind you got to listen to your machine and see what it's doing, because you're not going to see it right away. You have to listen for it. The higher you go, you open up your lever. Okay, all that fading is done on the top there. Remember we used a 000 right there? Now we're going to use the NST outliners, and you're going to overlap a little bit in the 000 area, basically right past the occipital bone. And you're just going to take this straight up. Keep in mind you want to stretch the skin, keep a comb in your hand, get most of that loose hair out of the way. Towards the bottom of the neck there, I like to use a flicking motion to get all those little hairs cut, but once you pass the taper section, try to lay the machine as flat as possible and get all those hairs cut. You notice how I folded his ear right there? That does two things. It stretches the skin behind the ear and makes it easier to cut, and it covers the ear opening so you don't get a bunch of hair in there. Be considerate of your customers and keep them comfortable when they're in your chair. They'll really appreciate it. I know I do. Right here I'm just doing a little bit of touch-up work in case there's anything I see that needs to be touched up. Um, you just want to, this is just the final finishing touches right here. As you can see, his hairline's a little thin on the corners there, so I'm not going to really line it up too high. Just kind of clean it up a little bit. Doesn't need much. Now look at my right hand, how I place my finger on his forehead there, and I'm just rocking the machine a little bit, and with my left hand I'm holding his head still. This is a very important part of the haircut. You can either make it or break it here, so if they happen to flinch, you're the one that's gonna get blamed for it. So make sure you're careful in this step right here. You see, I'm using my other hand there to stabilize the machine and kind of rock it a little bit. We're going to finish it off here with the straight razor lineup. You want to wipe the cream away and make sure he doesn't have any little zits or anything that you might nick. And what that does is it helps pull any loose hairs forward, and you can really tighten up the lineup right here. Even though you wipe the cream away, you still have the lubrication there, so it's okay. That way you can see what you're doing. Okay, I always like to save this step for the very end here. You want to make sure you wipe away any loose hairs that might be on the skin here. You don't want to risk clogging any pores after using this machine, because it basically shaves a layer of skin off. So you want to be very gentle with it. Don't go over the same area a bunch of times, because a lot of guys can get irritated really easily. So you treat this machine like you would the T outliner. You start at the bottom, and at the top of the motion you give it a slight flick of the wrist a little bit, and you're gonna put a very light shadow in there that you can get out if you like with the T outliners. If you're careful with this though, you won't really have to do much after this step. See at the top of the ear how I'm folding it down again? That's to help stretch the skin a little bit, and you get those tiny little stubbles that are usually right at the top of the ear. You see I'm stretching the skin a little bit here, and just ever so slightly getting that light shadow that was left behind. Here I'm just getting the last little bits of loose hair that might have been left behind. That shape shaper blade gets it down to, turns the hair into dust. So with the aftershave here, I like to use bay rum. It's not very aggressive, and it's it doesn't really burn. The sharper your shape shaper blade is, the less it's going to irritate the customer. So just keep that in mind, and always keep sharp blades around. Alright guys, there's a finished product. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you think about the techniques I showed in this video. The more you practice these techniques, it'll get easier and easier, and I guarantee you it'll make you a more efficient barber. Comment in the section below what kind of haircuts you want to see me post, and I'll make sure and put them up. Peace.